Smart buildings deliver innovation with new levels of occupant experiences, energy, and efficiency. But managing them does not come without challenges. Business leaders need an integrated view of their real estate portfolio, buildings, and space spanning across multi-locations. This calls for a unified platform to visualize an integrated view into all the disparate systems powering the building for more informed decision-making. Hello, I'm Joan Goodchild, Content Director with IDG. Today, we'll learn about how Cognizant and AWS together are helping clients prepare for smart buildings by developing connected, interactive, and intelligent places on a scale that tests the proof of value but can expand to multiple environments. I'm joined by Rajiv Mukherjee, Practice Director, IoT and Engineering with Cognizant. Welcome.
Thanks, John.
And we're also joined by Prashanth Ediraju, Global Segment Leader, Industrial IoT with AWS. Welcome.
Thank you, John.
Now, let's start with looking at how big is the opportunity. Can you explain what we're looking at here?
Right, that's an interesting question, John. So let's really take a step back, right? I think several of the leading analysts, they highlight the significant opportunity with transforming buildings with IoT technologies. And I'll let you look at one of the key statistics that one of the key analysts point out. But what makes this opportunity big is probably the key question to understand. And I think there are a set of three key factors that we see. The first thing is, buildings consume 42% of the global electricity. And then there's a projection that by year 2025, buildings will be the largest and the primary emitter of greenhouse on this planet. So in the U.S. alone, right, buildings are consuming 70% of electricity today, but 50% of it just goes wasted. And that number, based on some of the assessment work that's been done, is looking like a $400 billion spend in itself. So that's one point on energy. The second thing is, if you look at the ongoing operational costs, 50% of the building's total life cycle expenses is just under the maintenance. And if you look at a building's lifespan, that's about 40 years. That's a significant amount of money that goes into just maintaining buildings. The third thing is, all of us spend an integral part of our everyday life in these buildings. There's an estimate that we spend 90% of our lives indoors. And so there's a drive to ensure the time we spend is comfortable, safe, and secure. And that's the context of why this opportunity is so big.
So is this a fear of missing out opportunity, or can commercial and residential owners drive a defined ROI?
So I would say that, from an industry standpoint, this would be more of a, the residential and the commercial owners, are driving a defined ROI from smart building transformations and automation, rather than saying that the big opportunity and they're missing out of it, because there has to be a defined ROI, then why they're going to do this and what is going to come about. So if you look at the different perspectives of different, I would say, industries, right, whether it's manufacturing or it is, communication technology providers, energy utility companies or life sciences or even banking and the hospitality retail sector, each one of them have their own, I would say, perspective of improving the efficiency of the real estate, because all of these sectors, they are big occupiers of real estate, whether it's a warehouse, whether it's a branch, whether it's a factory, or it's a retail store. So all of them are using, energy, as Prashant pointed out, that, more than half of it is wasted in, there can be better management of those resources, better customer experience to their customers, as well as maintaining this equipment better, because over a period of time, the equipments do get old and, the efficiency goes down. So to look at those factors as well and provide the right touch point that how these different assets can be overhauled or replaced or repaired so that they're energy efficient, as well as give the right experience to whether it's you're looking at a residential complex or looking at the different commercial spaces. So these things would drive the value as we move forward. So what we're talking about, the digital is transforming the nature and the function of these complex, facilities. And as Prashant pointed out, that almost 39 to 40%, looking at people who are utilization of office space is not utilized properly, right? So looking at occupancy, looking at space and optimizing it, with people working from different locations, that's one big area that is transforming, and especially with different commercial models coming into like use as you go along, shareable facilities. So that becomes an important part. Then almost 30% of the energy, of any average building is wasted due to built-in inefficiencies, which would mean that, your different light utilities, your energy meters, your distribution of the energy within the building, as well as the different other operational parameters, they are not in sync, right? I mean, they probably will be working good on their own, but if you draw a big picture, they're not like in sync with each other. So there's a big opportunity there. And as well as, as Prashant was pointing, that 50% of the operating cost of the building, can come down over a period of the next, 3 to 4 decades if the equipment, the assets are well maintained and they are in sync with the rest of the ecosystem as well. And finally, all of this, affects the worker, right? Whether you are servicing the building or you are using the building as a tenant. So there's a huge possibility over there to transform that workspace. So those are some of the key functionalities or facilities I would say are key to transforming a building as we're looking today.
Building automation has been around for some time. What is the role of IoT in a smart building transformation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, John. So if you look at it from a standpoint of just take IoT, and at Amazon, we sort of work backwards from customers and we sort of pose this question. So I'm going to answer your question with a question saying, hey, if you knew the state of all your assets in your building, right, what problems would you solve? And I think in the prior two questions, I think we sort of talked about some of those problems. Rajiv alluded to several of them. Right? But let me just sort of recap, right? If you look at it from a standpoint of whether you're a building owner or you're a building tenant, what you care about is you care about the facility being safe, you care about being comfortable, and essentially you also want to ensure the productivity, whether how you're managing the building, and also in terms of if you're a tenant, how you are probably living in the building or driving productivity for yourself. So in the context of applying IoT, a smart building is all about collecting data from all building assets. Could be HVAC equipment, could be lighting endpoints, could be security systems, could be access control, and also data from people, right? So that in the end, what we're really looking to do is solve what I would describe as 5 key problems. First one being energy. We talked about why that's a big problem to tackle. Asset management within the context of energy. Building operations management. Effective space utilization, right? How do you drive safety measures? And ultimately, it's also about comfort and sustainability to various degrees. So I think it's in this context, and if you look to tackling these set of 5 key problems, that's where IoT plays a role. And it's all about driving out better productivity for the tenants of the building, better management of building assets, and ultimately even energy, which is the largest problem to tackle. And I'm sure, Rajiv, you probably have additional context based on Cognizant's experience in this space.
Yeah, absolutely, Prashant. Actually, that's a great way to look at it. See, my perspective and how we are looking at the market is, automation was there for a long time, right? If you look at building automation, you look at data being collected from your BMS systems or different, I would rather say, valves and actuators and things like that. It was always there, but what was not harvested properly was the data which is collected from all of these devices and assets. How do you look at the data? What intelligence do you drive from it? And then connect the dots, right? For example, in today's world, right, the facilities have become very complex. With so many different automation devices getting added, multi-tenancy, different kind of security coming in as well, right, for different network equipment and different kind of networks being employed if the building is occupied by different tenants. So that has increased the complexity for a facility manager, if you will, right, to look at this and make sure that, whether it's commercial or residential, their clients are on top of things all the time. So what are the key parameters, I would say, that are the key factors that a facility manager today wades through, right? Why are we saying that it is so complex, right? So you look at today the facility manager and the workforce is decreasing, ever so as we speak, right? Every year as the facility has pressure on its, bottom line to drive, the savings, the number of people manning the facility is coming down as automation takes care. So he has to be on top of all of this information in everyday life. So the first important factor is the asset life cycle, right? If you're looking at large buildings, it has got various degrees or complexities of assets which are there, which are deployed. For example, you're looking at HVACs, your chillers, you have various different kind of electric equipment like your water pumps, your gas pumps, and things like that, right? So what is the condition of those assets, right? I mean, a facility manager or his staff cannot be at all those pump rooms or that utility rooms all the time. So he needs to know that how they're performing is, based on the data that is being collected, is there a failure prediction which is around the corner, and he's able to plan for it, right? And that's because once the failure occurs, there's a huge expense to it, not only from fixing it, but also giving a lot of dissatisfaction to your tenants that they have to live without that particular asset for the time being it's being repaired. So it's important to look at the data. You're looking at building management systems, right? I mean, which is the heart of any big facility, right? All of the heavy equipment, whether it is electrical equipment, your elevators, your HVACs, they all run through the building management systems. So how you operate that, how you control based on the data that you collect, and what kind of views that a facility manager is looking at is also very important, which will help him to forecast the budgets and the expense payments, right? So what needs repair, what needs maintenance, what is the capital equipment that he is projecting to buy in the next 2 financial years. All of that data can be driven from all this information. Today, it is all in silos, right? I mean, based on what is being spent last year, some more budget is being forecasted on that, but it's not really related to how this equipment is performing, and there's a relation to that, right? So that's important. And as well as, how do you plan your capital expenditure, capital projects, how those get approved. All of that data can be linked together, from what the facility manager is seeing today and what kind of decisions that he is able to make. So that, I think, is an important factor when you're looking at, a building transformation. So just to give you a view that why this, smart buildings are complex and multidimensional, we will look at the next slide. So if you look at the smart buildings today, right from the way you acquire the data, so you have got different devices and sensors, depending on what is the extent of automation that one is looking at. The complexity can be real, challenging, like, different kind of sensors being retrofitted in different kind of assets, whether it's a pump, whether it's an electrical meter, whether it is, smoke and fire and light sensors. You're talking about, I would say hundreds of thousands of devices in a large commercial building. And each of those devices can work on different protocols, different connecting mechanisms. When you're talking about Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, low intensity networks, and so on and so forth. So there's a big complexity which is there, which is network and communication related. So how do you connect? How do you secure? How do you bring them onto the IoT platform? The second would be the analytics. So as you are collecting the data from these devices, at what frequency the data has to be collected. Once you collect the data, what do you do with the data, right? I mean, you have to analyze it to an extent that that you need the intelligence to be provided, and the rest of the data can be purged. What kind of data that you need at the edge, and what kind of data you need to pull to the cloud for your enterprise-wide reporting or dashboarding. So that's a strategy that you have to put in place as well. And then what are the applications or services that are utilizing the data, right? So whether I'm making some intelligent decisions, whether some other applications or some other areas are dependent on those decisions. So that strategy also has to be brought in place, that how all of that is benefiting from the data that you're collecting and that you're analyzing. And then finally, which is the most important part for any transformation to be successful, is the change management, right? And it's more so over here because if you're looking at commercial and residential buildings, most of the facility staff that you have here or the companies that service these apartments, they have been doing it manually, or mechanically for a long period of time. So to bring them onto the fold of, I would say an IT transformation, that how do they look at the data? Should they be, looking at the data and making use of it in the day-to-day functions and response? That is a key for this transformation to be successful. Then companies investing more that as the ROI comes about. So I think that is an important factor, the people part, that how do people change from what they were doing last so many years to how this whole transformation will be driven for the next decade or so.
How does Cognizant and AWS help companies approach the opportunity?
So, Jim, this is a very interesting and important question. And this will bring us to the first success factor that is important for people to keep in mind as they are going into this transformation is to, design a very holistic approach to this transformation, right? Because you have to, be very cognizant of the fact that when you're looking at a facility or looking at a space, you're looking at various different dimensions of that facility, right? You're looking at operations, you're looking at, resources, you're looking at energy, you're looking at the different stakeholders that are going to use this information, as well as, the health of the assets, right? And all of these, will not be coming live on day one, right? I mean, so different people will start the transformation in a different way. That somebody would probably tackle the asset part first, and then comes energy, then comes resources or utilities, and then would come the enterprise. In some other companies, they probably will reverse the order, right? So it is very important to, when you're designing the platform or designing the strategy, it has to be holistic in nature. It has to keep in view all the different kind of data models and KPIs that would exist in the different sub areas. Like energy, you're looking at the metering part of it, you're looking at the peak loads part of it, how, when are they going to shed, when are they going to utilize. You're looking at assets, you're looking at the health of the assets, right? And some of the assets are the same assets which are either shedding or utilizing the energy, right? So there's a relation between the two. The same would go for operations or security. So it becomes very important that, you take that into view, that not what's going to be immediately deployed, but the next, many years kind of a strategy and how the transformation is going to happen. And then you design how you want to go about it. So if you look at the next slide, right? So how IoT is bringing all of these buildings together, right? So there is one part which is the collection of the data from the different assets and sensors. And the next part would be that what do I do with the data? What are the different capabilities that are brought to life by the data that is being collected, whether it is from your HVAC systems, from your lighting systems, from your occupancy sensors or your power meters, etc. What do I do, right? So for example, I am able to manage my utilities and energy management better than you utilize the discounts that I'm getting from the utility companies, monitor and manage that, doing the predictive analytics of my, key assets. I would say that, what is their repair schedules, their warranty schedules, proactively looking at the signals and then alerting the facility managers that, some assets probably need to be taken care more than others. Looking at the overall, building automation from the point of view of the security of the building, who's entering, who's exiting, and with the whole realm of the e-commerce picking up, right, and the delivery is happening to your doorsteps, monitoring that and, alerting the residents that something has been dropped or something needs to be picked up. The entire, the layout and space management, right, with the real estate becoming very expensive commodity, especially in the bigger, cities. So the companies need to be on top of that, how much of the real estate that they have planned for is being utilized in the right way, so that some of the real estate can be given off, or maybe you want to acquire more real estate because now, the special on the facilities is going up. So some of the decisions are being taken by the quality of data which is collected and the frequency at which it is collected. In the next slide, we'll get a little bit of the peak of what Cognizant has built as what we are calling as a one facility accelerator on AWS. And we'll talk about some of the case studies in the later half of the session. So you're looking at that, various different facilities are connected on this common IoT platform, and you're able to look at the different, attributes of that facility, right? I mean, in a holistic way, whether it is your lighting HVAC, your different sources of energy, as well as different assets like your parking, your cafeterias, your common areas. So depending on what you want to monitor, so it can be done at the corporate level, and then you drill down to each facility and look at specifically each asset, each area, each operations, and then make sense of it. So that is something that Cognizant is doing, with AWS to bring this, the whole tool together, so that you could view your real estate in a much more holistic manner. Some of the sweet spots, if you look at, right? So I would say the low-hanging fruits that people are really looking at, why to make their building smart. And as we talk about this transformation, as I already pointed, that not everything will happen on day one. So you keep adding the use cases as we look over here, and over a period of time, the transformation becomes complete. So you're looking at key things like like a your tenant experience, right, or your rent experience. That how do you enhance the property's ease of use? Looking at the renewal of leases. You're looking at the smart services, like you don't have to go to your rental offices or maintenance offices to report a problem. You could all of your mobile app experience will give you all of the information on a fingertip, to the level of detail that you want. Like if your appliances are connected, your door locks are connected, your smart cameras are connected. You could see all of that, from your connected devices. Again, the data is being pulled from these sensors to the IoT platform and to the different apps that people are using. You are able to reduce your cost of maintenance by proactively sending people to repair before that asset fails. You're able to get data that, some asset is failing more often than others, so you probably need to replace them than repair, and make those kind of decisions through the data that you have collected. So that gives a lot of, I would say, saving from a large asset standpoint, whether it's, looking at an HVAC, looking at some generating gensets or your elevators and so on and so forth. So your forecasting becomes much better, that what you want to replace, what you want to repair, what you want to buy. So in your calendar forecasting year, that becomes better by the information that you're collecting. Then your the whole the increasing efficiency of the real estate by actually maximizing the occupancy, right? That how you want to lay out the whole facility, how different people can utilize different parts of the building. All of that data is collected through occupancy sensors, and then the space can be managed much better. And the biggest part of it is boosting the energy efficiency, right? That's a key area, as Prashant was also mentioning, that most of the building transformation use cases are being led by energy, because that's the single biggest component on your on your expense for a certain building. So depending on data that you're collecting, giving that the comfort and experience to your tenants, but also making sure that your different equipment, different assets, they are run at the optimum level and they are energy efficient. So all of that put together, I would say, are some of those key use cases that we are seeing in the market today that people are going after, that is fueling the transformation. And finally, so the second important success factor, as we were talking about, the first one being being holistic in your design. The second is that, see, while all of this looks like a shiny new object, but what is most important for a transformation to stand on its feet and be permanent is that there has to be an ROI. There has to be a value identification for the use cases that we are going after. And some of the use cases that we have seen, which have which has an ROI, or different companies are actually implementing it, is like, as we're talking about the energy part, right? So you're talking about steam and hot water. That's a big utility expense. The heating part of it, and especially if you are in that part of the country where heating costs are very high. So monitoring, controlling, as well as optimizing not only the asset, but also the expense of those utilities. The building management systems, right? Whether upgrading it, making it, in line with the technology which is available today, as well as monitoring and controlling the different assets that go through the building management systems that we see today, be it the Honeywells, the Siemens, the Schneiders of the world. Predictive and proactive maintenance, that's very important, as I was talking about, that, maintaining your assets at a level that they, use optimum energy, as well as they don't break down often. So that's a big expense that can be avoided, as well as the other, energy consuming assets like your lighting, your elevators, your power generations, whether it is by, electricity or by gas or your co-generating plants. And then the other important part is your surveillance through security, whether it is, looking at, what are the different stakeholders who are using the facility, and also to monitor the facility in terms of your fire, smoke, leakages, etc. That can add on to a lot of the expense, whether you're repairing it or, you have to vacate the, the commercial the property or the renting property to repair. So that again is an added cost. So all of that could be avoided if the ROI can be established and that, and then implemented on IoT platform.
Why AWS IoT for smart building transformation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let me take a step back, right? So I think what Rajiv just outlined in the previous several minutes was all about solutions and outcomes. Now, the way we approach, if we look at transformation in the context of smart buildings, it really includes, two key elements, right? So the first key element is about a set of foundational capabilities that are provided by AWS IoT. And then a partner community, like Cognizant in this case, builds on these foundations and delivers a very differentiated, domain-specific solution capability that's very outcome-driven, right? And as Rajiv outlined, several use case examples that are solution-focused and are very outcome-driven, and they address many of the challenges and problems buildings face today that we talked about in the early part of the webinar. And that's a very outcome-driven solution approach. Now, let me just spend a few minutes and talk about AWS IoT and why AWS IoT. So if you look at, a key factor is that IoT solutions require a certain set of fundamentals. And these fundamentals are around IoT device software. It's about control and communication. It's about data services, right? So what does device software do? Right? What device software does from AWS IoT, it enables you to securely connect devices. And these could be, connecting HVAC equipment, could be lighting endpoints, could be occupancy sensors. You collect data from them securely, you gather the data, and then you're able to take intelligent actions. It could be locally, even if you have no connectivity to the building. Okay? The second aspect of it has got to do with control services, which allow you to control and manage these fleets of devices that may be in a particular building or across many buildings. And you want to be able to securely connect these large fleets of devices that are present in many of these buildings. And then once you are able to extract all the data, how do you really extract value from this information? I think Rajiv talked about many of the use cases, and that's what you really do with all this information, right? So in the case of the Cognizant Connected One Facility, which leverages AWS IoT, it leverages the AWS IoT device software like AWS IoT Greengrass for acquiring data, doing analytics at the edge, locally, even if there's no connectivity to the cloud, and then keeping the data in sync with the cloud securely, right? Helps you to filter the information so that you only transmit, what is really necessary back to the cloud, essentially trying to optimize on network bandwidth. And it also, with the device software like AWS IoT Greengrass, you really aggregate, you convert, and you regulate data from the distant protocols that are used by various building management systems in the facility. And these containerized packages developed at the edge help you to really support the various protocols that can be really used. And then on the device management side, right, you've got a plethora of devices to manage, right? Different endpoint systems, different building management systems. And this is where, the connected one facility solution that Cognizant is providing is helping you to really onboard this in a very plug-and-play manner. And then the key aspect of it, right, is that there is, in every IoT use case, you also have the need to do deeper analytics. And this is where, powered by Amazon SageMaker, what the connected one facility solution from Cognizant does is it builds, trains, and deploys, machine learning models. You could deploy models for environment condition, asset maintenance, and energy management. These are some of the bigger problems to tackle in this space, right? So you're now able to intelligently then optimize HVAC operating schedules, depending on the environmental conditions. You can optimize it based on occupancy data, things like that. And Rajiv touched upon many of those use cases. So just to sort of wrap up this question, right, is that what I think you should take away is that AWS IoT provides a broad and deep functionality, spanning from the edge to the cloud, so that you can indeed build a solution like the one Cognizant provides for the building management space. And it helps to tackle it in a very, solution and outcome-driven manner, with AWS IoT providing the set of capabilities that have broad and deep features. It's got security, offers security at all layers, whether you're collecting data from the edge from these assets, securely transporting all this data to the cloud. And then you can now able to do with the set of deeper integrations with AI, you're able to make the actions more intelligent. And we talked about several examples and several use cases where that's being done. And in the end, it's also that this connected one facility solution that it chose AWS for hosting to take advantage of not only AWS IoT, but also the scalability and flexibility that AWS offers. So AWS now supports a wide range of programming languages, protocols, and data platforms, all of which aid in developing the solution to meet a diverse customer need. And based on the demand, right, you can now, the solution from Cognizant, you can actually decide whether you want to scale this up or down using some of the features of AWS auto scaling or elastic load balance, right? And that's essentially trying to optimize for the kind of demand that might be on the solution. So with that, maybe Rajiv, you have some additional context to add in terms of the right cloud platform choice here.
Yeah, sure. It's a great point, Prashant. I think we'll probably wrap it up with another important success factor, right? So, see, you're looking at the whole stack, right, over here. So you talked about the cloud. You talked about, once you collect the data, how do you analyze it, what's the, connection with the AI and analytics. But also, so what is important over here, and that's a very important success factor, is the managing the end-to-end technology ecosystem, right? So if you look at the different layers in that stack, right? So you have I would rather say the L0, L1 layer, where you're talking about devices that are collecting the data with the different kind of sensors, whether it is a vibration sensor, a temperature sensor, a pressure sensor. Different kind of use cases will have a combination of different sensors deployed on this asset, right? So once you collect the data, you're bringing it to your edge, the edge computing platforms that, as you rightly pointed out, Prashant, that not every bit of data needs to be uploaded to the cloud. There's a large expense over there. So the live stream comes to a local edge servers where you deploy the first level of logic to sort out that what's important, what are you gaining from those the data feeds, and then only transmit the data to the cloud, what needs to be shared with the larger organization or interfacing with the larger organization or different applications. So there's the edge part over there as well. And then from there on, we're talking about integrating it to the larger ecosystem of the integrated workplace management systems like IBM Tririga. Then you have the 3DM platform, which again collects data from the various BMS system softwares. And then integrating also on the other side is your BMS or building management systems. Are we talking about Honeywells of the world, Schneiders, Johnson Controls, and so on and so forth. Now, another important element of which comes over here is your actual, installation of this, the whole, IoT platform. So we talked about the platform, we talked about the sensors. But what's important is how do you install them, right? Your electrical connections, your mechanical work and retrofitting work, as well as the field deployment of this device. So partners just as Toshiba or District Controls or All-Byte Controls, I'm just some examples are depicted over here. The list is much larger than this. So what the important point over here is that you have to have that end-to-end ecosystem already in place. So when you're going for this transformation, different layers of the stack will require different expertise and different hardware and software vendors to come together to make this work seamlessly. So that's, for us is also an important success factor, while executing or deploying the design that we kind of talked about in the last few minutes or to the field and what's visible to the customer.
Can you share a customer success story?
Absolutely, Joan. There's nothing better than sharing and eating our own dog food, right? And I would start with the example that we are, or rather than a case study that we are deploying in our own campuses, because we believe that if we are able to transform our own real estate, it gives a very strong example for others to follow suit as well. So for the large outlay of real estate that Cognizant has India operations, so we have started with the Chennai facility, or one of the largest campuses in Chennai, to transform the way that we discussed in the last few minutes. And we have started with energy, right? So we are integrating our BMS systems on this one facility platform that we spoke about. We are getting the data for consumption of electricity, of your air conditioning needs, of lighting needs, and then fine-tuning it depending on the demand, depending on the space and that is being occupied by the different our colleagues at any point in time, and then monitoring and controlling some of the lighting, some of the AC vents, and so on and so forth. And what we have seen in the last few months, that we've almost been saving close to 17 to 18% of energy savings month on month, and which is estimated to give us close to $1 million saving per facility. So it's still in the works. We've started with energy. Some of the other things that we have as part of this roadmap is that monitoring the sanitation and overall health of the campus, right, of the cafeteria buildings, of our common areas, because these facilities have a lot of people working in them. We're talking about almost 7,000 to 10,000 associates working per facility. So people going into the cafeterias and the long lines which are there for people to take their food. So we are optimizing that experience that people only go when the lines are not as much, or they can actually look at the dashboards and see how the different common areas are performing, and then take the decisions so that the overall productivity of the resource goes up. So that's the key use case which is now being implemented as well. Then we are having use cases of security, that people coming in, people going out, and that is being linked to their workspace, their space management, so that the facility can be used by different shifts. It can be used by only people who are authorized to use it. So those are some of the key use cases that which are coming to life, as we spoke about, and more are going to follow as we are looking at not only the use cases in those campuses, but also to take it to other campuses as well. The second case study we talk about is a case study that is based out of Europe. So this company is one of the leaders in shared workspace management and renting out. So what the customer wanted is to give an experience to their renters, that once you rent the property for a number of hours in a day, or maybe number of days in a month, because just shareable facility, that the things like your cafeteria services, your overall communication services within the space, like your AR, VR, your speakers, your TV, all of that is coordinated. Logins are done in the right way so that people get that experience. So all of that is connected through the IoT platform, and also that the way they want to connect it to their billing, right? So if I'm renting the property for 4 hours and it is only meant for say 20 people, I'm monitoring that real time. So if more people use it, or they're using it for more number of hours, it is automatically connected to their billing engine, and the billing happens accordingly. So those are some of the things that you could do, and you utilize the facility to the level that it is planned, and as well as integrating the different sensors as well as the different devices which are there onto the same platform. So this has resulted in a top line growth for the company, because now they're able to monitor the exact usage of those buildings and the facilities, and the billing happens correctly. There's an increase in the desk utilization and occupancy as well, because they're able to do it in a much more efficient way. And obviously the peak time utilization of space has come down by 40%, because they're able to manage the facilities in a much better way. So this is getting rolled out across Europe for this company. We started with a few countries and few buildings, but will gain momentum as we go along.
In your experience implementing these solutions with a number of commercial and residential companies, what are 5 success factors for IoT-driven transformation?
Sure, June. So I'll start with that, and I'll have Prashant chime in as well. So, and probably this will be a good wrap-up of the discussion that we had today, is that the 5 most important points that one needs to look at while planning and implementing a transformation of this size and scale. The number one being, have a very defined strategy and a very holistic approach. That as we talked about, that different facets of the transformation will happen over a period of time. So it's very important to define the big picture first, and then go, part by part, just like Lego blocks. It should not happen that in year 2 or year 3 of the transformation, you are stuck because you took some technology decisions which are no longer flexible or scalable. So that's very important. Identifying of the use cases, because everything has to have an ROI, whether you are generating more revenue for the company or you are saving on the operation and maintenance. So each use case will either get you money or save you money. So that has to be clearly established from your base, I would say, assumptions that you're taking today. And building a scalable and a flexible architecture which aligns to your first point, that you're having a holistic approach, that it is a modularized architecture. You can build features as you go along, and you can add more capacity as you go along. Choosing the right cloud platform, and then finally managing the end-to-end technology ecosystem, as we talked about, that across the stack you have sensors, you have edge computing systems, you have network requirements, you have cloud requirements, and then finally deployment and field service. So all of them have to come together to deliver a successful transformation. Prashant, do you want to add something over here as well?
Yeah, I think Rajiv, you brought out all the key factors that are necessary for transformation, but I think you brought up one key point that I just want to sort of elaborate, which is it's about the value-driven approach, right? And IoT, it's all about business outcomes, and it's an important part of how companies in the smart building space are seeking to transform their building operations. They're making the tenants that live in these buildings much more productive. They're making the environment much more safer. So there are a large gamut of what I would describe as challenges to tackle. And I think with the solution approach that Cognizant is bringing to the table, that is a very outcome-driven approach. And I think building on these success factors is a key element to drive that.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank Rajiv and Prashanth for that informative discussion. For more information on smart building transformation, please check out the resources section, which includes a video showing how Cognizant and AWS are bringing buildings to life with IoT. You can also visit cognizant.com/IoT for more information. For Cognizant, AWS, and IDG, I'm Joan Goodchild.